नमस्कार। ये क्योंकि मुझे बताया गया पूरे देश से लोग हैं, इसको अंग्रेजी में देना है, लेकिन अगर आपको लगता है हिंदी में दिया जाए तो हिंदी में भी दिया जा सकता है। तो मैं इसको अंग्रेजी में
सर पूरे देश में है सर, अगर इंग्लिश में ही दें तो बेटर है सर। इट विल बी
ठीक है, धन्यवाद जैन साहब। So I mentioned about the universal human values in the student induction program or DEEKSHARAMBH. So let us understand that how do we address, how do we connect, how do we motivate our students? And as a rhetorical question, I have said why students matter. Of course they do. That is why we exist here as an institution. And how do we motivate them? How do we make them comfortable? And this can be done by guidance through universal human values. In my lecture, I will have, this is a very brief outline. I will talk about what we expect from our students and what are the concerns that the student has. Normally, we talk about our expectations, but we should also ask what are the concerns of the student? And if there is a gap, how do we bridge the gap? Only once we bridge the gap at the mental level, at the thought level, then only the student comes with us. And after that, actions follow. So the student induction program is designed after a study of this gap and how it can be bridged on one hand, and where we want to go as an institution as well as humanity as a whole. So the student induction program is only the first step, but an important first step in bridging the gap and taking students with us forward. In this DEEKSHARAMBH, there are many activities, but the central aspect there is universal human values and how do we do mentoring. So that will be discussed at some detail here. And then what is the feedback of students about the DEEKSHARAMBH, about the student induction program? What is the impact of the program on the individual student and the institution? So all these things we will discuss. And finally, what is the role, true role of an educational institution? So if we look at our nation has many expectations from its engineering colleges as well as all higher education institutions. And one of the expectation is to generate manpower, rather the central expectation is to generate manpower, human beings who are well trained in technical knowledge and skills of their area. They are willing to work for national needs. They are ready to fulfill their social responsibilities. In other words, they have a holistic outlook towards life. And this is a natural expectation from our students. Sorry, this is going little, these slides are coming in a sliding way. I just got this new laptop with a different operating system, so please bear with it. The incoming undergraduate student, on the other hand, let's look at them. Their concerns are actually quite different. They are insecure about their own future. They do not know whether and what kind of job, what kind of livelihood awaits them once they finish. Remember, these are the concerns when they are joining. They also do not know what they want to do with their own life. And, you know, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, the beloved president of this country earlier, always told young people, it is a crime to have low goals. You must have high goals. And against whom is this a crime? It's a crime against yourself, because then you will never work for high goals because you only worked for low goals. I will call them ordinary goals. And for example, livelihood is an ordinary goal. It's an important goal, but it's an ordinary goal. Along with that, what are my goals? So this students are unsure of their own goals, their own aspirations, what they want to do with their life. So this is a situation where they are unsure and educational institutions are silent on it. They are mute spectators of the students who are coming in and their goals. And we teach our own subjects. We teach mechanical engineering, electronics, computer science, law, literature, but we do not talk to students about their own aspirations and what are their sources of insecurity so that we could address them. If we look at other more aspects, then the students are seeing a society which is far from ideal. There's many problems. There is cheating. There is sometimes group violence, and society has contradictions, inequality, corruption, groupism, violence. And sometimes the students also start believing this is the only way life is. And in such a situation, then they think cheating is all right. There's nothing, this is how society is. Even if it's not all right, one has to do it. So these are the situation. This is the situation. These are the thoughts which are running in our students. Now the question is, what should we do? And I believe that the most important factor which can bridge this gap is the relationship between teachers and students. And that relationship today is mired with generation gap. Students feel, oh, either teachers are no different, or they are talking of some idealist things and they are not aware of how society is today. So they feel this is the old generation, we'll have to find our own path. Now you look at, so this I believe will be the most important factor which will take us out of the current situation. The role of the teacher is going to be extremely important. Now, DEEKSHARAMBH is a way by which teachers will recognize their own goals. Teachers will recognize their own responsibilities towards students, towards institution. And with that recognition will come more thoughts about how to do it and how to practice those thoughts then. So how to do it will be followed by how to practice it. So DEEKSHARAMBH or student induction program is the first step in this direction. But if you were to look at what nation expects and what the incoming students' concerns are, you will say what a wide gap. There is just no overlap. That overlap is actually limited to livelihood skills, and that's all. So this gap has to be overcome. So how do we bridge this gap? So to start bridging this gap, the most important thing is to connect with the student. It is the relationship. And this connect must happen as soon as the student comes in. If we delay it, that connect will be lost. So how do we connect with the student? We need to give him or her space to relate to the new environment. The new environment, both physical as well as systemic, as well as cultural, all the three. So physical environment about buildings, about fields, about things which are there, laboratories, but also other people who are there, teachers, students, staff. And what is the culture of the place? So relating to the new environment, provide them space so that they relate to the new environment and take the best from this new environment. So this comes down to how do we connect? How do we build positive relationships? How do we work to develop a holistic view of life? And ultimately, how do we get students to realize their responsibility? So this is how we need to bridge the gap. How do we start bridging the gap? By connecting, by establishing a connect. So in this, if I may say so, establishing bonding with teachers, establishing bonding of students with teachers, assimilating the student in the ethos of the institution, enlarging their worldview where they see themselves and the institution as part of a larger world, and developing character. Character has many attributes. It is about persistence. It is about rising in the face of adversity. How and following it even when there are difficulties, not to lose heart. So all these are all the parts which we need to do. And for this purpose, AICT recommended that the student induction program with universal human values should be part of every college, every engineering college, and every new incoming student should go through it. In fact, they decided that 3 weeks should be reserved, first 3 weeks should be reserved for the student induction program, and after the 3 weeks, regular classes will start. Similarly, UGC also has recommended, they have recommended a shorter program, but I would say that 3 weeks is required to run this program and build a connect, build a bond with your students. And remember, you are taking 3 weeks out of 4 years, not just 3 weeks after first semester. So as the universities and the autonomous institutions and national institutions are drawing up their curricula, they are keeping aside 3 weeks for it, and if necessary, reducing syllabus slightly in the first semester, and that is made up in the subsequent semesters. But the most important part is that it is the key lies with the teacher, key lies with the faculty who are going to connect with the new incoming students. So a little bit on the background of the student induction program. Let's take a look at the background. So the issues that I have mentioned, they are not unique to students in any one class of institutions, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, no. They are common to all institutions. IITs and other premier institutions are also facing similar issues. There are concerns about how to motivate students towards studies. The students who have studied very hard for sitting in a competition, gaining admission into our premier institutions, they lose motivation very quickly. They are also under a lot of stress. They suddenly see that they are at a new place, and before they have become adjusted, before they have even begun to understand the new institution, things have sort of steamed ahead in terms of courses, lectures, and so on. So again, there is a concern, how do we bond with them, make them feel a part of college, enlarging their vision. All the time they are worried about I, me, and myself. How do we enlarge their vision beyond themselves to society? So these are similar issues being faced in premier institutions. And after many years of experimentation on various parts, the student induction program was designed at IIT BHU, and it was launched in the institute in July of 2016. And to launch this program, large number of workshops were held preparing the faculty, because faculty are going to be the key elements of change here. Pretty soon, within, I should say, just about the time this program ended, its word had gone around in the country, and the Council of IITs met in August, in which all the directors are there, the Minister of Education is there, Chairman of AICT, UGC, they are all members of the council. So they, that meeting, I was anyway a member as a director of IIT BHU, but I was asked to make a presentation specifically on the student induction program. And this happened in August of 2016. And I think the idea clicked. Everybody saw through it that it's a very good thing. It should be done. and the council decided that it should be implemented in all the IITs from next year, so that the undergraduate students are benefited right when they come in, and the result will be institution will benefit also. About a few months later, March of 2017, AICT decided that it should be launched for all engineering colleges, and under TechIP program, this started being rolled out in 2017, and AICT decision with full preparation sort of got launched in July of 2018. It took 1 year in preparing some, I think about 5,000 teachers, 5,000 faculty over 3-day as well as 7-day programs for preparing for how to conduct the student induction program, and how can the faculty bond with students, new incoming students. The UGC also saw this at that time, and UGC decision started getting implemented from 2019. Although I think there were a couple of universities which implemented things from July 2018 itself. So this is the background in which these things happened, and now I will go to the student induction program itself. What is a student induction program? And so what are the first goals of the student induction program? It is intended to achieve the following: assimilation in the ethos and culture of the institution for the new students, exposure to a larger vision of life, bonding among themselves, bonding with senior students, bonding with faculty, learning a creative skill in the arts. For engineering, this is what was made compulsory. Adopting a more regular lifestyle and professional discipline, sleeping at proper time, having good diet, not junk food, etc., etc. And overcoming weaknesses in some essential professional skills. And this was only for those who need it. So if you look at some more details for each one of them, so assimilation in the ethos and culture of the institution. This is based on the culture and practices of the institute. Exposure to a larger vision of life. This is based on larger national as well as human good. Bonding, as I mentioned, both with students and among students and with teachers. Learning art form, regular lifestyle, and overcoming weaknesses in some essential professional skills. For example, English. In case some students lack English skills which are needed, there are some proficiency modules. And in this, through this bonding with teachers, the idea is that they would be assimilated in the ethos of the institution, and the worldview would also be enlarged. So what are the activities to achieve these goals? So in this 3 weeks induction program, there is physical activity, there is creative arts. Let me also start giving some details along with the main headings. So physical activity, games and sports. For residential institutions, they can have a morning program, early morning program, let's say starting at 6 or 6:30. Creative arts, these are offering to students where they learn an art form. For example, painting, sculpture, pottery, music, dance, etc. And the institution can take help of expertise in their local area to conduct these classes for 3 weeks, every day for 3 weeks. Mentoring and universal human values. These are discussions in small groups of students with a faculty member for each group. We'll discuss this in much more detail later. Literary activity, encouraging Indian languages, general reading, writing, debating, enacting a play. So through this activity, many things can be done. Proficiency modules for those who need it, for example, English. Lectures by eminent people, visits to city and surrounding area. So these are people who could be invited from industry, entrepreneurs, public life, social activists. And if they are alumni of the institution, it makes a greater impact, because students say, oh, I can also be like this. I am a student now and I'll be an alumni later. So I can also play a role as alumni, as just as these accomplished alumni have done. Last one I have written is what comes under orientation, a 2-day orientation, exposure to institute, to department, branch, innovation. Now this could be spread out longer. So not only do orientation on the first day or first 1.5 days, but also talk about department. What does it mean to gain admission into that particular area of study? What does innovation mean? And how study in a college differs from study in school. Unlike spoon feeding, here they will have to become more independent. So handling independence. So there are, if you'll notice, out of the above list, there are 2 activities which have classes. One is the creative arts and the other is universal human values. But note that in either of these 2, there are no lectures. In the creative arts classes, there is creative arts. There is hardly any lecture. And in universal human values, there are no lectures. It is all through group discussion, and particularly in small groups so that the bonding can take place. So mentoring is a key part of forming these groups, and the mentoring takes place through universal human values class. The class is conducted through group discussions, and in these group discussions, what we call as dialogue or samvad, it is the group discussions are not through do's and don'ts, do this and don't do this. No, group discussions are a process of dialogue where the student expresses his or her thoughts, his issues, concerns, and the faculty mentor, like a guru, handles them gently and taking the student out of where he or she might be stuck. So this is a big responsibility. The group size is kept small, namely 20 students to a faculty mentor each, so that the interaction can take place, bonding can take place, and this bonding can last as long as the student is there in the institution and sometimes even beyond. These discussions are over well-defined topics and there is well-defined content. After all, we are talking of universal human values, not relative values. These are universal human values. So there are well-defined topics, examples, and content. The content contain not just the, you can say, theory aspects, but also about the examples and how it relates with day-to-day life. Right? So this is the last element, relates to issues in their life today. So the examples that are chosen in this are those examples. They raise issues that are important for them today. And this creates a relationship between teacher and students in the group. So I thought I will take a pause here so that we can have a discussion. So, Dr. Yogesh, is it a good time to have a discussion? So we can open up the discussion.
Okay, fine. Participants can ask their queries under Q&A.
So while people are typing or thinking, I may use that time. If we can also, if somebody can look at them, Dr. Yogesh, if you can look at them.
Yes, I see.
And then speak out the question that may have been typed, that will be helpful.
Participants, if you are having any query, you can type under Q&A. One question, sir.
Yes.
What is the difference between mentoring and counseling, sir?
All right. It's a good question. What is the difference between counseling and mentoring? Counseling normally means it is one-to-one. that person has some personal issues, personal problems, and you try to give a customized answer for that. In mentoring, it is, and so counseling typically is associated when there is a problem. So in mentoring, without a problem, even though person may not feel any problem, you are trying to take them forward. Typically, it is not just one-to-one, it might be one-to-one also sometimes, but it is with a group, and you are mentoring that group with an eye towards the future, even when they don't see any problem today. And mentoring also requires understanding the potential of the group and inspiring them, taking them forward, telling them what can be achieved. And in this process, if there is a need for one-to-one discussion over personal issues, that can also take place, but typically that takes place outside the group. Sometimes if the group is homogeneous or group has bonding, good bonding, then people start sharing it within the group itself. So that is how counseling can take place once mentoring creates the right environment. It creates an environment about the future with an analysis of the present. That is what mentoring does. And then any problems that people have, they may also raise those. If they are general, they get discussed in the group. If they are very individual, they can take place, outside the class also. So that is the difference between the two. I see one question. Somebody is asking, will the PPT be shared? Of course, the PPT will be shared as a PDF and it will be available to
One
you.
more question, sir.
Yes.
How to have interaction and activities with students during online group?
So this is a new situation which has come up, and this will affect particularly physical education and elements of arts. As far as lectures are concerned, in the student induction program by eminent people from industry, entrepreneurship, alumni, they can still be conducted. Telling them about the college can also be done. Uh, Overcoming some professional deficiencies like English, they can also be done. Coming now to universal human values, under universal human values, these discussions can take place. It will require some skill on the part of all of us who are all learning how to use this medium effectively. Because one problem with this medium currently is that it connects the teacher with the students, but doesn't connect students with each other. It doesn't connect the audience with each other. So, but however, the dialogue can still take place between the teacher. If it's a small group, keep the microphone open from both sides. The students need not write and send their questions. They can speak right in the middle. They can pose their queries orally. So in a small group, this can still be conducted, uh, I would say, fairly effectively. I myself had doubts how effective it will be, but I find that no, it can be. Not all the time, but it can be, provided we learn how to use this technology a little bit. And then there is interest on both sides, both from teacher side as well as student side. If there is interest, then this can be conducted. Yeah, next question.
How far SIP is important for diploma level institution?
So AICTE decided that it should be done for polytechnics. It should also be done for MBA. It should also be done for pharmacy. These are the areas, all these areas still, I mean, they come under AICTE. But they said we will do it in a phased manner. And we will start with engineering first. And I am told that for polytechnics, for diploma level institutions, there is a new model curriculum that has been prepared. And I'm told that student induction program is very much a part of that new curriculum. So people who are from diploma level institutions, faculty, they can check what is the status there, whether it has been implemented or it has been proposed and placed in front of everybody for discussion. So you can check whether it is getting implemented immediately or there is still time.
Okay,
But the
one more
time
question.
there can be used to prepare. One institutions can get ready to implement it whenever it gets formally, officially become part of the curriculum. Yes.
Okay, one important question. How do we deal with religious conflict and different approaches when we are talking about universal human values?
Okay, the good part is we are talking of universal values and they underlie all religions. So the religious practices, they emerge out of the universal human values. So if we focus, if we can convey the universal human values, then people will be able to practice their own religion better. And this has been my experience in talking to people from various faiths, various sampradayas. And they say, after doing this workshop, I have started understanding my own religion better. And I am able to now separate practices, rituals from the core ideas in my religion. And these core ideas is what today's generation demands. Today's generation is less interested in rituals, etc. And this holds not just for students, but it also holds for young faculty. So in a way, it strengthens the good elements in our religion. If some bad practices have come in, social practices have come in, slowly they will be filtered out. And who will filter them out? The people who belong to that religion, belong to that society, will filter out whatever poor practices have come in. And I think it will strengthen our faith in humanity as a whole. And our journey as a humanity, it will give us an understanding of where we stand today and what path we need to follow later. So it will also, in time to come, this will also happen, and this will be helped by this Universal Human Values program.
One more question, sir. Today's generation think that we are more smarter and having more knowledge than our teacher or parents. So become difficult to mentor them how to handle this situation.
Yes, so this is a dilemma that I think every generation faces. Uh, there are, we have grown up in a certain society, and that society has also changed. We have grown up with some technology, and that technology has also changed. So when we as a generation behave, we as a generation act on things, we act based on our practices that we have learned, the culture that we have imbibed, and the core values. So what happens when change occurs, some of the practices become outdated, but we do not know which practices should be dropped and which practices should be adopted. So this is the dilemma of every generation, not just our generation. Now this requires clarity in what is core and what is the support, outer support that is provided. So as I was mentioning earlier, there are values, there is culture, and there are systems and processes. So systems and processes, they are like set procedures. They are like rituals, if you ask me. And rituals are important because they make the institution run properly. On the other hand, if some rules have become outdated, then they should be refined or changed, or new rules can be brought in. Now, similarly for culture, as cultural changes, as outer environment changes, cultural practices need to change. And therefore, this is a dilemma that a generation faces, because suddenly they find that their practices are no longer being valued. And what they do not realize is that they have some very strong and good values, and they are there, they are forever. If they are universal, they are forever. As I mentioned, trust, respect, love, these are forever. They were forever in the past, and they will remain in forever. Now, based on them, the cultural practices, culture as well as the living or practices will change. So what should change and what should not change, that we can convey to the new generation if we ourselves have clarity. So this clarity, we hope the universal human values will give grounding on the core values, on the universal values. And with that grounding, with confidence, we can approach the students and have a dialogue on the culture, on the practices. And so then we don't need to tell students do this or don't do this. We can actually, through this dialogue process, help them arrive at their own understanding. And then you will find that they will value our core values that are there in us, and they will drop the other aspects of those practices which are no longer that relevant. So this will help us connect with our new generation, and it will help because we are able to evaluate our own practices, our own culture with respect to universal values.
Okay, sir. One more question. Does it need any special training or qualification for mentoring and counseling?
So the question is, everybody has heard it. What special training is needed? So the word training is actually not the exact word for it. Right? Education. So education as opposed to training. Training normally means training to do something, practice a skill, learn a skill. And so it is beyond training, it is education, but loosely if you use the word training, it will include our practice by us. Training in how do we practice trust, how do we practice, so skills for practicing trust, skills for practicing respect, skills for conveying our things in a suitable manner. So this will be called as training. Now through this workshop, we will be first understanding what the values are. So the training will relate to that, and the training part, if you like, will talk about how do we convey this to students. So there are sessions in this workshop which will train you how to conduct these sessions, how to conduct the dialogue, what examples to take. There is also a teacher's manual that will be given, and using that teacher's manual, you can conduct these classes or these group discussions, so that the training will be with respect to how do we conduct. And of course, training will also let you think and arrive at how do you lead your own life. Because finally, the way we lead our life, that is what goes to the students most powerfully. So we'll start with training, we'll talk of concepts, also talk about training, but ultimately it is part of imbibing these values so they become part of our life. And that will happen over a period of time. And as I was mentioning, the first beneficiaries of such a thing is the person himself or herself, then their family, and after that their students, their student group in universal human values, and then the institution as a whole. Next.
Okay, sir. There are no more related questions. We can continue.
Okay. So then I will
break after 15 minutes. If I want to take, we can take further questions.
okay, all right. Yeah, we'll have more chance for interaction.
Yes.
Unless you feel somebody has a very urgent question that is posed, which is very important. Otherwise, you'll get more chances for asking your question. So let me share my slides again. Okay, you can see my slides by now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we go to the next slide. 1 minute. Yeah. So we have talked about institutional expectations and how to bridge the gap. We've talked about student induction program, its goals and activities. Now we come to mentoring and universal human values. Now we come to the central topic for this 5-day workshop. Okay, so what is the role of universal human values? So first of all, what is education? So education purpose is to take student from discipline to self-discipline. And this is an inner process. And Swami Vivekananda had said that education is the coming out of the hidden self, hidden talent within ourselves. It is our own, it's an inner process by which we understand our own self. And that comes out, and flowering of that is the goal of education. And if you talk of universal human values, how to do it effectively, we must allow for open discussion in class. And this discussion must not be based on do's and don'ts. It should be based on trying to give and share our understanding of the world. And this process can start with self-observation. Now, the method of conduct of these universal human value discussions, as I was saying earlier, form groups, classes are conducted through discussions, and these discussions have practical exercises in real life. So we discuss, they have to do an exercise. Also, exercise may relate to their friend, how they got angry. When I talked of self-observation, observing oneself when one is getting angry at one's own friend, that's how one can start. So as part of this course or part of this discussion with the student, there are practical exercises which they will be asked to conduct in their own real life. And observation, and then we will be giving some proposals which they can verify. So just like in science, you observe, you have some theory, and you see whether the theory is verified or not verified. So this is the process that we will follow, the method of conduct of these discussions. And this part of the student induction program. So while you may have special, can you hear me? Is my voice clear?
Yes, sir, it is clear.
It is clear. Okay. So
ये तो लग रहा है उनका स्लाइडिंग ऑडियो भी सही से नहीं आ रहा है
I'll request people to mute their mics. Yeah, I do understand there are sometimes network problems or hardware problems. I'll request you to keep your mic mute so we can go on. And I'm sure these lectures are being recorded and they will be shared with you. So you'll have a chance, even though if you have missed some parts of it, you'll be able to listen to it again. So other activities of the student induction program, there may be specialized teachers for art, for physical education. Of course, there are people who come from outside who can give lectures. But as far as this component of the program is concerned, this has to be conducted by faculty of the institution. And not just faculty from one department or those faculty members who are teaching first year students. Faculty must come forward from all disciplines and all departments. Why is that? Well, this is the core of education. It is everybody's responsibility. Therefore, it cannot be left only to experts. Because we as faculty are the ones who will be talking to our students. We are the ones who will be teaching them their subjects. So now we are the ones who should start connecting with them, start talking to them about universal human values. So this is the reason why this program must be conducted by normal faculty coming forward to conduct these discussions. Now we come to the content. If you look at human goal, Manav Lakshya, the human goal is at 4 levels. The level of the self, so this is true for every human being. So at the level of the self, at the level of the family, then at the level of society, and at the level of nature. So at the level of self, the goal is that every human being gains clarity or samadhan, clarity about what I must do in any situation. And this can happen if we have right understanding in the self. Then in the family, what are my goals? One of my goals is prosperity. I should be able to fulfill livelihood needs, my physical needs, not just my needs, my family's needs. And within the family, I am able to live without any complaints. My relationships are free of complaints. And this is called as Nyay in Sambandh, Nyay or justice in relationships. At the level of society, there is absence of fear. If we build a society in which there is justice at family level, education is helping gain everybody clarity, and we understand the larger, the principles of human life, the existence, both physical as well as physical nature, as well as the human nature, then we will be able to build a society that is free of fear. And this can be sometimes also called as justice in society or a fearless society. Society in which there is no fear because there is no need for fear. Nature, coexistence with nature, sahastitva, and we understand the nature which is not just cyclical, it is a mutually enriching cycle. So it is cyclical but goes beyond cyclical and leads to an enrichment of every element in the nature. Now this content is designed based on coexistential philosophy. It's propounded by Sri A. Nagaraj. This was done by a research of 30 years, and I'm mentioning to you a website where you can go and read more on this philosophy or darshan. Now, given that this is what the content is, now how do we approach the content? What topics do we cover under in our group discussions? So there are 5 units for group discussions. The first unit is about gratitude, student aspirations and gratitude. The student aspirations is really trying to understand their thoughts, their aspirations, and then really the topic starts after that. So student aspirations is the first breaking the ice, trying to know each other, and gratitude is really the topic that is taken up. And gratitude starts with how many people are helping me, how many people have helped me reach where I have reached. So that is the first unit. The second unit is competition, how to go from competition to cooperation with excellence as the goal. So this topic is taken up where we want to take them out of this competition mode and put them in the cooperation mode. So instead of competing, instead of seeing the other person as their opponent, they should see the other person as my friend who is ready to help me and I am ready to help him or her. So this is cooperation. And then what is the goal? A goal is to reach excellence in whatever we are doing. The third unit is where we start identifying our needs. What are my needs? And what is my self? So my needs of the self and needs of the body. So my body needs food, my body needs clothes, my body needs housing. And what are my needs? My needs are, feeling of trust, feeling of respect. So these are my needs. So we try to talk about these two needs, and these two needs are actually different. It is important to understand how they are different and how they can be fulfilled. So the topics that we take under this, immediately after covering self and body, we take up the topic of peer pressure, what kind of peer pressure I feel as a student, as a faculty, as anybody. So this peer pressure, unfortunately, there is a lot of peer pressure on young people. It is peer pressure about achievement, peer pressure of doing something, peer pressure about clothing, etc., etc. From so when we discuss this topic, students say that this is something no one has ever talked to us about it. And our young people are under so much pressure today, thanks to advertisements. Advertisements, they're one of the major methods which they use. They create a feeling of insecurity and then they tell you, oh, you should buy this shoe. You are not looking good, you should buy this shoe. Nobody likes you, you should use this perfume. You can see the idiocy of this whole line of reasoning, but this is what they do, and people who feel insecure succumb to this, and this unfortunately doesn't solve the problem. It only makes them buy those things, and they find that finally it didn't solve the problem because the solution lies elsewhere. So there will be a fair amount of discussion over these 5 days on each of these. So peer pressure, prosperity. What is prosperity? So I have more than my physical needs for my family. This is what prosperity in family means. So how do we understand prosperity? And it means that we understand prosperity by going back to what are my needs of myself and needs of my body. From there, I require things more, I require things to fulfill these needs, and I should have more than what is needed to fulfill these needs. So prosperity is something that connects with the physical part of it. So I may need food, I may need clothing, I may need house, I may need a transport vehicle, I may need money. So, but this is related now to needs of my body and needs of myself. And then we come to self-confidence. Peer pressure again relates to self-confidence. It's the lack of self-confidence that leads to, greater peer pressure. And as we gain confidence in ourselves, the pressure of the peers goes down and an understanding dawns on us. Now, English as a means of communication or as a source of self-respect. A language is something that is used for communication. And if I am going to communicate in English, I should learn English, I should be able to follow, I should be able to convey. But is it a source of self-respect? Now, how can it be a source of self-respect? So this is a fundamental problem. And when we discuss this third unit, we start with self and body and we take it to address all these other issues that arise. Then we come to the fourth unit, which is about relationships. And these relationships with parent and child relationship, with respect to students, it will be also teacher-student relationship, then brother-sister relationship, friend-friend relationship, etc. And all these relationships have an underlying expectation, and this expectation is of values. Now, what are these values? These values are actually feelings within us, feeling of trust, feeling of respect, and these indeed are the values. These are the values in relationship. So under this unit, we will be discussing 2 or 3 values in more detail. Third value is gratitude, which is already included. That's how we started. But then there will be total 9 values, which will be at least 6 of them will be mentioned. although we may not have time to discuss them when you conduct these group discussions. But in these 5 days, we will take a look at all 9 of them. Then we come to the 5th unit, which is nature. 4 orders in nature. How do we preserve environment? How do we not just preserve? How do we add to enrichment of environment? And as I was mentioning, these things in this course are actually very practical. So while we may talk of big things, but they will relate to little things that we do. So when we talk of environment, we may talk of at global level, but in my life, in my practice, do I take care to preserve electricity, not waste electricity at least, not waste water, avoid use of plastics? So the idea is that through this, my action on the ground changes. So philosophy or global thought on one hand, but it must connect with my action today. And in my little action, in my action today, with my people around me, in my local area, and so on. Then of course we can talk about our freedom movement, how it was conducted, and sometimes when the student induction program is running in August, 15th August, so then in IIT BHU we showed Gandhi film and had this was seen by all 1100 new students, but they were discussed in small groups of 20 each, again in the group discussions. Okay, so these topics are designed for gaining clarity about issues of life, developing empathy, and this is the core purpose of education. So these latent things inside us, empathy and other values inside us, come out and we can express them because we have clarities about life. So our behavior with other people changes, our action on nature changes because we have gained clarity about issues of life. Next I come to what was the feedback that was received from students and what was the impact on individual students and institution. So we will now, so this is feedback that was collected from students of IIT BHU in an anonymous manner, and these are elements that are taken from there. We all the students were thoroughly welcomed into the institute. This is one of them wrote along with other things. I did not know that morning breeze could be so beautiful, although I was a reluctant walker to Gymkhana grounds at 6:15 AM initially. Induction program has brought us into the main ethos of the institution. The most surprising part was the night sessions with our student mentors, student guides. It was believed by most of us that IIT is a place for ragging. Remember this, they are writing in 2016, July of 2016 or 17. IIT is a place for ragging, but the way the seniors interacted with us and helped us to know about the various activities and the entirety of the campus was commendable, and we developed a very nice impression about our seniors. Few more things. One of them writes, I wanted to learn an art but could not do so. I left it in my class 6. The program focused on the varied culture and tradition of the Varanasi city. Look at the third one. The hectic schedule finally could help achieve my parents' ultimate dream that I would get up early and go to sleep early. Majority of the mentors have done excellent job, etc., etc. They refer to some evening session that was conducted, a memorable session. This was done in their hostels along with the senior students. Okay. So let me stop here and again take questions, have some interaction, because we have talked about content, the method of conduct, as well as when we say content, then what does it mean for our young people? So I've talked about this. Is it all right to take a break now so that people can ask questions?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So one question: will gender biasness or discrimination be addressed in UHB?
So gender discrimination, why discrimination? It should lead to cooperation. So, so what this program does actually, it creates a ground for gender sensitivity also. So all distinctions of the kind which are based on race, on color, based on caste, creed, on income levels, on gender. So all those distinctions can be addressed. Now, individual groups or individual institutions can actually focus on one or more of these. Wherever they feel that this is a greater issue for us, there you can take it up during the 3 weeks itself. But remember, the student is with you for 4 years. So you have ample time to deal with these issues, any one of these or all of these over a 4 year period. And indeed, one of the goals, one of the purposes is that these issues can be opened up and they can be taken up as part of our education.
One more question, sir.
Yes.
As mentor, do we need uh, take care about personal problem of a student? As young minds faces lot of issues nowadays.
So teacher is the mentor and sometimes the first counselor. So what happens? We you will as you know you'll see over these 4 days, next 4 days or total 5 days, you will see what kind of issues we are raising with students, and they are practical, which they are facing in their real life. They do not consider them as problems necessarily, so they will bring those issues in the group discussion itself, and you can address them by providing a solid base of universal human values. So these are not just opinions, they are based on universal human values, and they will slowly give confidence to the student that I can address these issues. Now, when there are problems, sometimes the students will raise them during the group, or they might meet you separately. They may want to meet you separately. So indeed, in any course, we give office timings that come to my office. You can discuss. So the students can come to you in your office and discuss and talk to you about some problems they might be facing. And in case you find that indeed it's a serious problem, then your college would have counselors. They can also be sent to counselors. But my own thinking is that perhaps 80 to 90% of the cases will be handled through group discussions themselves. So they provide the substrate or the base or the locus on which the ideas can be discussed, in which based on which the concerns and even problems can be discussed. After that, maybe another 5 to 8% would be discussed if they see you on a one-to-one basis, and perhaps only 1% or 2% cases are ones for which counseling would be needed. So that means it will become a healthy system, not an unhealthy system which has now become, where the atmosphere is very toxic, is very corrosive, it's very conflict ridden, and the student is under tremendous pressure. So we are going to ease off that pressure based on an understanding of life, based on an understanding of human beings, and therefore based on an understanding of universal human values. Next.
One question: senior students involved in mentoring?
So the senior students, a good question. this has to be done in a phased manner. So in IIT BHU as well as IIIT and many other places, first time when such a program runs, it is difficult to involve senior students because they do not know what to discuss. Okay, so their involvement in universal human values is limited. A year later, the first year students who have gone through universal human values, out of them, you choose student guides. So then they also become party to mentoring, and they can also attend the group discussions if possible, if their classes don't clash with this, because here the student induction program is running, their classes would be running. So senior students can, in case there is no clash, they can come. But it is better done not in the first year, but after 1 year or even 2 years, when you have created a basic thought process among the senior students. Now, senior students can be involved in the student induction program in other activities right from first year. And here you'll have to choose responsible students. So students who are good in games, who are also sensitive, who can help new students come in and participate in games. Similarly, in cultural activities, in your student association, union, whatever you call it. So senior students can be involved right from first year in these other activities, and from second year onwards, they can be involved in universal human value discussions also.
One more question. How to develop moral ethics among students as all are from different backgrounds?
So the ethics comes, or even morals. Sometimes, we don't understand the difference between these words. So morals, typically what people understand, moral science class means they will tell you what to do, what not to do. Ethics relates to society. So what are somebody who's practicing good morals, then when he or she acts in society, then what are the ethical requirements? So these are the two ways these two words are understood. Once you come to values, they are at the base of morals, they are at the base of ethics. So the good part is that the values are the same. These are universal. And if you understand them, if you start practicing them, then morals and ethics follow, and they would be different in different situations. So that people are coming from diverse backgrounds, they may be told about different ethics, but when you come down to values inherent in those ethics, they are universal, they are the same. So, and we are at least talking about the universal values in this. So they will connect very well with both ethics and morals in different situations. So that is what makes it possible for us to talk to students no matter what background they are coming from, where they are coming from, rich background, poor background, they are coming from India, or they are coming from Alaska, or they are coming from Japan, they are coming from China, Pakistan, Europe, anywhere. The content remains the same because these are universal values which are there in every single human being on this earth. The issue is only that of recognizing those values. So Swami Vivekananda, when he went to America to address the parliament of the religions, the reason he was able to talk to all of them, because they were diverse religions, diverse people, the reason he was able to talk to them because he talked at the universal level. So the universal values is an element which allows us to talk to anybody and everybody, no matter what is their background. The only difference is examples. The examples are those which will be relevant. Person should be able to understand the example. So here, so that even though our students are coming with diverse backgrounds, they are still living in the same larger society, and it is not difficult to choose examples which they will be able to understand. Okay, because they are after all living in the same society. Next.
There
Hello.
are no more questions, sir.
Okay. So then let me resume. I'll share my slides again. Okay. So hopefully they have appeared for you. Slide.
Yes, sir. It is fine.
Okay. So we talked about the approach and methodology of mentoring. We talked about content, and then we went to topics in some detail. In this over these 5 days, we will have a lot of time to discuss all of these things. And we also saw some feedback. And now we will look at what impact has been, what is our experience? What impact does the student induction program and universal human value creates in the individual student, and what is its impact on the institution? Okay, so first, impact on the individual student. So first of all, there is no magic here. There is no magic wand that you wave the wand and the problem is solved. No, the impact on the students is slow, but it is steady. That is all I can assure you. If it is done, conducted properly, it will make an impact, which will happen slowly, but hopefully it will be steady, and slowly and steadily it will move forward. There are many components, many topics that are covered, and different topics or different parts appeal to different students differently. And this is because we are individually different. Sometimes if one student is bothered about one aspect, another student is bothered about another aspect, then naturally, when that aspect is covered in this group discussions, that is, their respective aspects to the two students will appeal more. So let us see what kind of impact it makes at the individual level. So I have sort of broken it in different parts, and what I'm going to tell you is based on surveys that were conducted at IIIT Hyderabad, and similar thing has been corroborated at several other institutions also. So at the level of self-awareness, one example where it makes an impact on students, in fact, many students have come forward and said, I have become less angry. Earlier, I used to get angry at everything, at my colleagues, at my friends, and suddenly I find that my anger level has gone down. And this comes out of something very fundamental in how we view the other person. Do we view the other person as my opponent or as my friend? Do I view the other person as doing something purposely or doing something because he or she doesn't understand what he or she is doing? So this level of anger goes down, and hopefully it can disappear ultimately. And this happens, the process at least starts with these group discussions on universal human values. And it is because we start seeing the other person differently. Now, once relationships in family, so many people have reported that they have started viewing their own family members very differently. In nuclear family, I was viewing my father as an ATM to whom I talk when I need money. And I now realize how much he does for me. Similarly, for my mother, people say that I used to take things for granted, that my mother will take care of everything that I need, my food, my arrangements, and now I realize how much she is doing. So there, awareness level about one's relationships in family. And the idea is that to transfer this awareness and this feeling of relationship from family to classroom, and family to workplace and family to hostel and so on. So this gets transferred to friends who might be there in classroom, in workplace or hostel. And people have reported earlier I was seeing my relationship with my friends as something give and take. I need this, so I should become a friend with such and such person because he can help me there. And if the person can't help me, he's not my friend. I don't waste my time. Now suddenly I have realized what joy there comes out of relationships. So I start recognizing my relationship not as a transaction but as a feeling. So this is, as I mentioned to you, different parts will appeal to different people. But what I'm writing to you are those parts which have affected large numbers of people who have reported through these anonymous surveys about what aspects touch them. Relationship in society, their role in society, but this is still at the level of relationship. So how do I act with the shopkeeper? How do I behave with the auto driver? What do I do? So relationships of people who are not in my immediate family or immediate friends, but larger society. Relationship with nature, avoiding waste. Many students write, I have become more careful. I now avoid waste of electricity. I used to leave the lights and fans on. I've become much more clear about them. And right utilization of natural resources. I should not be wasting natural resources, whether it is water or it is energy, and I should not be polluting. So I become more careful with plastic, avoiding the use of plastic as much as possible. So this is what we have found at the level of individual. Now, what about impact on the institution? Now, surely, if the individuals are changing, the institutional atmosphere will change. And this is where, again, I say, for individual, I said slow and steady. Here, it's somewhat different. It is slow and sweeping. It is very slow, 1 year, 2 years, and then suddenly there is a wave that you can see. It's not a wave, it's a silence, the wave of silence. And when we implemented universal human values, there was no student induction program, but there was implementation of universal human values from the year 2005, academic year, July 2005. Within a couple of years, visitors started telling me, I was a director there, that your institution is different. And I always ask them, please tell me in what ways it is different. First, in the second year or so, people said, no, I don't know how it is different. They thought for a while. They said, no, I can't figure out, but it is different. And then somebody mentioned, you know how it is different? It is a less aggressive place. Wherever I move here, people are helpful. Now, how has that come about? That has come about because we see relationship with every human being. And it comes first with our family, then with our friends, and then with strangers. So people whom we have never met, when we meet them, we also try to help them. And we are talking of cooperation with friends. Now it is, and competition, avoiding competition, or there is, the problems of competition with friends. And now with unknown people also, that cooperative feeling comes in. And so it is slow at first, but environment change takes place. But of course, let me also tell you that the journey is not easy. It takes time, it takes effort. And this sweep then continues, and it must seep in, it must come into the institutional practices. So this is where putting humanistic practices in running of the institution, in different facets of the institution, and they are what make the, this sweep or the wave continue, bringing about a change in the institution. So what are some of the impacts on the institution? Some different facets. So seriousness towards studies. This was particularly true for those students who are, you know, otherwise good, but for some reason they have lost motivation and they are doing very badly also. So such students, they recognize the role of studies, the seriousness, and for some of them, at least, there were dramatic changes in grades. I know of some students who went from, who were getting, you know, 3 points out of 10, suddenly moved to 9 points and above. But these are few people like that. But in general, students start taking studies more seriously. They see a purpose in their life. At least even if they are not worked out the purpose, the exact goal, they realize the importance of doing whatever they are doing well. Better relationships, less ragging, towards zero ragging, even without punishment, because large number of students become sensitized to ragging. So we used to talk a lot about ragging, which is now reduced. So in 2005 Universal Human Values, we started discussing with the new students as well as second year students separately about their role towards the new people who are coming in. And for new people, how do you know, deal with the situation? And both were based on the universal human values, and it led to very rapid change in the ragging scenario. Even though there were threats and warnings were not increased, even without that, the whole thing underwent a change. You know, every college today has these cultural festivals, youth festivals. Unfortunately, they are influenced by not our indigenous or ethnic considerations, but sometimes from Western culture. So Western culture is, you know, one can enjoy it also. I'm not saying that, but one should also give due place to our own things because they are part of our society. So one thing that happened quite unknowingly to us in IIIT when this was done, the youth festivals became more inclusive and more ethnic. So they included ethnic elements in the cultural programs, whether it is Indian music or it is, you know, Indian craft, Indian painting, and so on. And they were more inclusive because they said not just students but staff, non-teaching staff also we will involve. So all this takes time, but this happened on its own. We didn't even discuss these things in our group discussions with them, where the course used to run for the whole semester. And now this course runs in IIIT over a 3-week period. What happened to the messes? New mess started called Yuktahar mess. Then value of work with one's own hands. There was even one department which they said we will run our department based on relationships. So this was a postgraduate department with MTech and PhD students, and that underwent a massive transformation. This was civil engineering, teaching earthquake structures and earthquake engineering in IIIT. We underwent a major change. Many of these things were repeated. Similar impact happened in IIT BHU, where much better relationships. Satvik mess was running there already, but how it got strengthened, and various other relationships which are there. Working with non-teaching staff, this was the outcome, because after the universal human values was running, then group discussions or workshops were run for non-teaching staff. This happened in IIT BHU in a fairly big scale, and these workshops actually changed the dealing of non-teaching staff with students particularly, and even administrative staff with faculty, because they saw them as their brethren, as their people who are related to them. So there was a change in the environment of the whole institution. Humanities projects for students was tried, social internship. Impact on faculty became more understanding of students. Earlier, in both these institutions, IIT, BHU, IIIT, Hyderabad. I'm talking about my personal experience, which has been repeated, and I've heard similar things from many other institutions which have implemented the student induction program with universal human values. So the faculty have become more understanding about their own students, more understanding when they make a mistake also, and they are able to then inspire them also, because students now see them as somebody who wishes them well, who is connected with them, who is not just demanding things from them. Second part is relationship among faculty colleagues. This is the more difficult thing, because years of staying together sometimes creates, a feeling of opposition because of some incident that might have occurred. But here again, things changed. In IIT BHU, when we conducted similar workshop like the one which is being conducted now, this workshop is for people from various institutions, but such a workshop was conducted for faculty members within the institution. And the first 2 or 3 workshops, at the end of the workshop, there will be 2 faculty members who will come forward and say, we want to announce something. We have not been talking to each other. These are 2 faculty colleagues, lived together, been there together for 20 years. And they say, we're not talking to each other for last 10 years. Because something happened, now we don't even remember the details of the incident. But now we said, after going through this workshop, that we are all related, we have feelings and empathy. So these feelings overflew while both of us were in this workshop. We talked to each other, and then they come forward and embrace each other in front of everybody. So this can be a harbinger of change. Faculty attitude towards non-teaching staff feel not enough is done for them. Faculty doesn't give them due importance. They are, after all, performing a very important function. So their attitude towards non-teaching staff changes. Please understand that whatever I am saying is not universal, not global. Not everyone is having these kinds of issues. But I'm saying in general, these are the areas where people have reported maximum impact. Okay, so let me now come to role of the educational institution in society. So, role of the educational institution is not meant to be a mirror of society. So whatever society is, that gets reflected into the educational institution. No. And we cannot say that look at what type of students we are getting, look at what kind of society we are having. Because our role of the educational institution is to provide thought leadership to society, prepare the next generation, do research and suggest solutions to problems. So preparing the next generation, and this is where the thought leadership, the educational institution plays the role of thought leadership in society. We do not realize it, but the Prime Minister of the country is sitting in our class. Because the Prime Minister is, future Prime Minister of the country is somewhere sitting in some classroom. So if we do our job well, if an educational institution does its job well, provides the right environment, then that student who is going to be the future Prime Minister will grow up in that environment. All the others will also grow up in that environment. So the leadership of society gets built through our educational institutions. Even if the society environment is not very good today, the change can start from educational institution. And the entire leadership of the society is, after all, trained in our educational institutions. And to do any of this by the educational institution, the role of the teacher is central. So this would happen only if teachers understand their role and can play that role. So for teacher to play that role, relationship with student is crucial. because only after that relationship, student recognizes that relationship, then the student uh, will connect and will seek solutions to his or her issues or concerns or problems. Now, teacher is the role model for the student, whether we like it or not. We are a sage on the stage. So the student is watching us, how we behave, what we do in our little things. And those are the things the student copies, adopts. So our role is not just in delivering content, general skills, but also the larger content. We deliver the larger content, and we also inspire students as role models, and we connect with the student. So the teacher has to become a friend, philosopher, and guide. And this journey, by the way, teacher's role may look as difficult, but it's a role that becomes joyous. One enjoys being a teacher. So earlier, if you are facing that, I talk to my students in my narrow subject and never talk to them about anything else, and look at their behavior, look at what is happening. Now here, this program prepares you, and the student induction program provides you the space with universal human value group discussions to talk to your students, connect with them, and take up issues of life. So you are their friend, philosopher, and guide. Now, to be able to do this, it will require preparation on the part of teachers. And as part of this preparation, such a faculty development program is taking place. There are 3 days, 5-day programs, 7-day workshops. In online mode, NIT Patna has taken the lead and is running 5-day programs designed so that the teachers become prepared for mentoring and conducting group discussions. Now, finally, we need to understand that for these values to be conveyed to the students, we have to start living these values. Only if we live these values, the student will take us seriously, right? But if we do this, it's a journey of joy. A true role of the teacher in education would be restored. And with that restoration, the whole society will begin to change. So in conclusion, universal human values is a critical part of the student induction program. And wherever it has been done with proper care, with the involvement of the head of the institution, by training of sufficient number of faculty members, it has resulted in bonding among students, relationship between teachers and students, sensitization to their living environment, namely the other hostel staff, serving staff, college staff, faculty, and it also helps them in assimilation in the ethos and culture of the institutions. Now, besides this, and through this, students' attention is drawn to looking into themselves regarding mental and physical needs, peer pressure, honesty, self-confidence. Larger issues of life are discussed, responsibility towards nation or larger society, and then preservation and enhancement, enrichment of environment. So this is what takes place. And the experience of this has actually been quite amazing for both students as well as teachers. So let me tell you that in 2016 July, this was started in IIT BHU, the student induction program. Then I had thought that students will say we enjoyed the physical games, the physical education, and we tolerated these discussions. But do you know what their reaction was? They said these discussions were the best part of the student induction program, because no one has ever talked to us about these issues, and these issues are so real to us. And it turns out that the students were physically actually less prepared. So they said physical education was very tough. It was difficult. We were all been preparing for these competitive exams. We didn't do any of that, and so what we did actually after that, we eased off on this physical education, reduced the intensity, and suitably, of course, incorporated the inputs into the universal human values. This is an acknowledgement about what were the different elements that went into the design of the student induction program. So it incorporates or integrates three different ideas. One was the foundation program, which was running at IIT Gandhinagar since 2011. And I'm talking about design of the student induction program in 2016. So the foundation program of Gandhinagar, because there were no classes for 5 weeks, they are doing it for 5 weeks. Then we introduced the universal human value group discussions. These courses were started at IIIT Hyderabad since July of 2005. And mentor-mentee network, earlier sometimes people used to call them as counseling service. And they are running at several IITs as well as many colleges for past several decades. So these three elements were put together, and such an integrated program called the Student Induction Program with around 1100 incoming students was run at IIT BHU for the first time in July 2016. I should also mention that experience was gained by doing large-scale experiments in universal human values in hundreds of colleges. So after things started in IIIT Hyderabad in July 2005, it moved to other places. In fact, it moved to UP Technical University, currently named as Abdul Kalam Technical University. So these universal human values moved there as a course from 2009 onwards. Punjab Technical University, such a UHV Universal Human Value course, moved there from 2011 in engineering colleges. And in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, in BA, BSc, BCom colleges, these courses on universal human values were introduced from 2013. So this is a short history of an acknowledgement towards all these people who tried out all these other things, and which helped us in design of the student induction program, and then in proliferation, it spread and training of mentors throughout the country. So I'll stop here. Thank you. We can take questions.
Okay, participants, you can ask question under Q&A. There is one question, sir.
Yes.
Is there any difference between ethics and morality?
This I addressed in my last discussion. I think over a period of, as you do this 5-day course, you at that time, sometime this issue can be discussed.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more question. How up to how much extent the digital techniques are useful for human values? In that way, it could be useful for the same.
Yes, I think I used to think that physical classes is a prerequisite. Physical group discussion are a prerequisite for this. But I'm finding that online things are working also. They are also conveying some things. Some part they are conveying rather well actually. So I would say conduct it in this using the digital platform. And of course, it requires understanding the limitations as well as the advantages of a digital platform. So this is again something I answered earlier.
Okay. There are no more questions, sir.
All right.
Okay. So we can stop here, sir.